going on, everybody? It's your boy Big Dave. Another episode of Culture Dads, Age of Sword and Cassette. Without further ado, I got my buddy, editor-in-chief of the Aureus Press, Aegeon. He put out Aegeon 1, now Aegeon 2, The Decline and Fall of Western Art. Prolific meme poster and master of aesthetics, Mr. Brendan M.P. Hurd. How we doing, sir?
Greetings. What an intro. You're like a magic carpet salesman.
I actually tried to get a job as an RV salesman pretty recently, and I was doing really well, and I went in for the interview, and there was like the worst interview of my life, and it went historically bad. That's a story for another time, but I almost fulfilled my destiny.
No, I got to hear this. You can summarize it now, quick.
Come on.
Yeah, go on.
Okay. So real quick, I'm talking, I'm getting set up to go be an RV salesman. I was really pumped about this because if you're a really good RV salesman, the profit margin on these freaking RVs is through the roof. You could make a big pile of money doing this. So I applied. It's this awesome little mom and pop place. They're like religious, so they're against like gay stuff. They got the Trump flag out front. It's like the kind of place you want to work at. They're just like wheeling and dealing RV boomers. So it was going to be the perfect spot for me. Well, first of all, I'm talking to the guy that's going to hire me. He's got this deep ass voice. I figured it was the owner of the whole shebang. I go in, I meet him. He's like 20 years old. He's like half my age almost. I was like, oh, so you're so-and-so. He's like, yeah. Like I like pissed him off with that first. First of all, I pissed him off. Secondly, like I traditionally nail interviews. It's like my thing, right? I go in, I sit down, I'm funny, I'm charismatic, I'm high energy. People they just have to hire me. You know what I mean? Especially when I turn it on for the normies. They just always have to hire me. So I'm like going to this, and for some reason I'm like fucking like weird and nervous. It was like the first interview I had since lockdown. I drank like I had a Red Bull and an espresso and a cup of coffee. So I'm all completely just wired. I'm sweaty and neurotic and like completely wired. I don't know why I did that. And the night before, it was trick or treat in my area. So we went trick or treating the night before. And this is part of the story, I promise. So I go into the interview. I'm like ranting and raving. I'm all hyped up on stimulants, right? The caffeine. I must have like sounded like a maniac. I'm sweaty. My hair is frizzed out. I look like a complete fucking maniac. And he's like, okay, well, do you have your ID with you? And then I realized that I forgot my wallet, right? So I was like, I just made up a lie. You know what I mean? I always just kind of tell the truth and just eat the outcome all the time and just not care. But for some reason this time, I just came up with a lie. I was like, you know what? I'm very sorry. I went trick-or-treating with my family last night. The friend of the family, their kid thought my coat was their coat. They took it. My wallet was in there. I'm sorry, I don't got it. And they're like, okay, that's no problem or anything like that. So
that's a good lie. That's a good lie to produce on the fly, though. That's quick thinking.
Yeah, it was a really great lie until later on. So during trick or treat, right? So backtrack to trick or treat a little bit. During trick or treat, we stopped at this one house. It was like some edgy boomer lady, and she's giving out candy, but she also gives out like these little airplane bottles of liquor, right? I'm not much of a drinker. I almost rarely drink. When I drink like once a month, I have like 1 or 2 beers. I'm not a drinker, but she gives me this little airplane bottle of something or other, and I was like, oh, fuck it, I'll take a sip. So I crack it open, and you know how them airplane bottles, a sip is half the bottle. So I take half the bottle. I put the bottle back in my coat, and I just forget about it. Well, fast forward back to the interview. I'm sitting there at the during the interview, and the guy I'm interviewing with, the young guy, I'm ranting and raving about how great I'm going to sell fucking RVs. Right, he's pretending I know what I'm talking about from watching YouTube videos for the last 3 days. Right, and he's like, he goes, and I'm like looking around. He's like, excuse me, you dropped your bottle. I look down, this little bottle comes rolling out from under my chair. It fell out of my coat and it rolls across this floor, half drunk bottle of liquor. And I was like, I'm so sorry. we went to a house last night during trick or treat, and somebody gave it to me. He's like, oh, so you put it in the jacket that you left behind?
Oh, that's funny.
I was like, funny. Oh my god! And he
See,
goes,
now you say that's the worst interview of your life. Really, this is the best interview of your life.
yeah.
It can't get any. It can't get better than that. I mean, it could if you like got naked or something, or lit something on fire. Like,
yeah, my fucking flaccid bipper pops out of the front of my zipper. That's the only way that it would have been worse. But when that happened, he's like, okay, I think we've heard enough, and thank you so much for. He was professional, but he was like, this guy's a drunk fucking maniac, right? So he's like, thank you for your whatever coming in, blah blah blah. Later on, I text him. I was like, look, I'm sorry. Is there any way I could come back in and like try again? He's like, he says, I'm sorry, but we're booked up. God bless you, Dave. I'm like, fuck. Son of a bitch.
That's a nice way to do it. God bless you. That sounds nice. That's a nice way to put it.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously, obviously he's just a little Zoomer kind of a nervy type guy. I mean, first of all, he should have seen immediately that you had probably every skill required to sell RVs in a really, Barnum and Bailey kind of way. I would have hired you. I would have been like, fuck, this is great.
I would have sold more fucking RVs than, dude, it would have been crazy. I would have been rich.
You obviously were you referencing that YouTube guy, the angriest guy in the world? What was his name? Remember that old YouTube thing? He's selling RVs and he's getting all pissed. Oh, you haven't seen that? Oh, you got to see that. It's old. That's classic YouTube, like early days YouTube.
Oh, is that the guy? He's like, buy this van. People were murdered in this van, or like whatever.
No, it wasn't like that. But it was like, I can't remember now. It's so old. But he's getting really, really angry. He's trying to make a video about selling the RV, and he keeps fucking up his lines and like just swearing and like it's funny. I can't remember the lines now because it's been so long. But I'll send it to you after if you've never seen it. But I just thought of that one.
Oh yeah,
because that's YouTube gold. Selling the RVs.
I'll have to check it out. So anyway, back to what we're supposed to be doing. Mr. Brennan here is an artist. He's a musician. He is an appreciator, a respecter of beautiful aesthetics. And also bare 70s breasts and many other wonderful things that are part of the human experience. So Mr. Brennan just came out with Aegeon Part 2, which is a science fiction pulp magazine. And I actually just bought it, by the way. It's coming. It'll be here on Friday.
Nice.
Tell us about Aureus Press, and tell us about how you got into Aegeon.
All right. So. Let me think. I took to social media, let's say, years ago on Facebook, because I had an idea for a book, the first book about art, which I wrote and labored over for like years, and I wanted to write it. So I wanted to obviously grift it myself. So I thought, I'll go to social media and start doing that. So that's started all this process. That's for me, social media. It started out as the best way to grift a book of this kind is for me to post the kind of pictures that display what art is meant to be and versus how it's become, kind of thing. And that's just what I started doing. And then I realized as well, it was a good way to grow whatever you were trying to sell. It just happened to be a kind of catchy model that I've seen other people adopt since as well, which is, it's just pretty pictures people gravitate. Then I discovered that you can send them little messages in between your pretty picture posting, little bits of philosophy or ideas you've had yourself. And that's a pretty effective way to kind of do it. So that's my whole social media experience, really, was doing that to grift that book. So I started originally as, what did I call it? Traditionalist Western Art, but that wasn't even actually my page. That I never liked that name because it was another guy started that. And he asked me to help him. And then he soon kind of vanished. So he actually had that idea. So that was the first name. And I kind of hated it. So I changed it along the line to Aureus Press, but it's still like at Tradwest Art, I think, on Twitter and stuff like that. So, I wrote that book and I was happy with it and I was doing that. But then I thought, okay, I've pigeonholed myself because I want to write more books, not necessarily on this topic. So I came up with calling it Aureus Press and just going into more writing about other things that I wanted to write about as well. Obviously, fiction, science fiction was one of the first things that came to mind because it's something that I've always really respected and was very influential to me growing up. And I feel I really was heartbroken by what happened to it. I used to get what happened to it was it's the same as everything else that's been happening culturally in the West. But I remember I used to religiously get anthology books similar to Aegeon. I used to get them. It used to be like to be a yearly anthology of the best sci-fi short stories. These would be the best things because each one would be like you get just a bunch of very short stories you could digest really easy. Some would be very, very brief. Some would be a bit longer, but they'd be packed full of ideas, like, crazy, crazy ideas. And it would just be, it was a great joy to me to get this. Then somewhere along the way, I think it was around 2010, maybe earlier, I stopped getting them because I started to notice there was the forced injection of female authors, and then it was like gay and lesbian authors. And it just became like everything else, political. And even back then I wouldn't have had anything necessarily against that, but I noticed the stories were shit. They were just about like relationships and politics, basically. And they just got ruined. And I didn't, along with everything else in decline, that was a fiction, that was a cultural entertaining gem of mine, something I always liked, that got ruined specifically. So I just thought, and I always wanted to do that. I wanted to write those kind of stories, like crazy stories full of ideas that really got the old fucking almonds quivering. So after writing even though it's kind of crazy to write a nonfiction book on art and then go straight into like pulpy science fiction, that is nevertheless what I chose to do and what I'm determinedly still doing. And then before I came out with Aegeon, I noticed you were doing the Biz Archives, and I thought, oh, this guy's beat me to it. What's he doing? And you did indeed beat me to it in terms of the that idea, the short story compilation thing, which is just a great. You obviously were a fan of the same kind of fiction. So that story is press so far is all these things mixed together. And the name Aureus Press. I mean, I created a website for it, but it sort of sits there. I posted the odd article on it, but I don't have a super organized, you might say corporate sort of business model or anything. It's just me doing what I want to do. So I'm trying to maybe get it more organized. So, but it's a bit haphazard, but that's the way I like it too. I don't like corporate anything. So, fuck that.
Yeah.
You can just take it or leave it, I guess. Right. But I'm determined to continue with Aegeon. I'm very happy doing it. I'd like to keep it going issue after issue. So it's a regular thing. And there's stories in there you may like, stories you may not, But I think if you follow it, you're going to find a lot of crazy ideas and interesting things that you wouldn't get out of normal culture, either because it's been emasculated or, I mean, if you look at the classic science fiction publishing houses today, the ones that put out all the really classic stuff that they made all the movies about and really created the whole various genres of epic sci-fi and what do you call it, cyberpunk and all the rest of it. It's all descended into this kind of woke madness. And I looked down the old, was it Hugo or Nebula awards list? Every single one was like a blue-haired young woman, like you can tell it's just not, it's gone. They're not doing it.
Or N.K. Jemisin, the most prolific and greatest science fiction writer of our time.
Who the hell's that? I don't even know who that is.
N.K. Jemisin. She's this big retarded fat black lady, and her stories are just terrible. Like a lot of her prose is like talking about burps and farts and buttholes, and it sounds like it's very like irreverent. It sounds like an edgy ninth grader. She's just not good and not very smart, and her writing is atrocious. And they've given her something to the tune of like 4 Hugo Awards in a row or something like that, which is like more than Frank Herbert. Yeah, like she's more award winning than fucking Frank Herbert.
Fuck's sake! I remember the first one I bought, the first compilation. Those ones I always got, that was crap. And I just remember the first story I read. It was proudly by this lesbian author. I didn't even see what was sci-fi about it. I think there was like it was nothing. It was like 2 lesbians walking through a mall and some Italian guy tries to hit on them is all I remember from it. And like, where's the fucking science fiction of this? I think they mentioned the year was like 10 years in the future, maybe. It's like most loosely fucking grab ass woke bullshit. Just like, let's inject this here, this pointless fucking Picture You story, just so you know this is what we're doing now.
Yeah,
like nothing. Oh, it was fucking miserable.
Yeah.
They're
like is completely paused. Like, and also throw all of the politics and everything out. They're just not skillful storytellers. They're just not smart, not talented people.
No, they're grifting their way through everything in the world right now just by saying, how dare, you cannot defy them, because they'll start crying about how they're being oppressed.
Yeah.
So they grift their way through every fucking thing this way, because if they start squawking, then these quivering, weak boomers it's gone beyond that now. They've given up every possible defensive line they could have and just ran screaming. So it's gone beyond anything that they can turn back from, I think. It's like I made a post once. I was listening to actually Frank Herbert. It was a Frank Herbert interview he was given, or not, a speech he was given. He was answering questions about Dune. This is after the film came out, the Lynch film. And some gay guy comes up in the audience and says, "Oh, how do you feel about the depiction of homosexuals in the person of Baron Harkonnen, and how it should cast us in a negative light?" And it sounded exactly like a woke lefty from today, but this was like back in obviously the 80s. And Herbert just like fucking laughed it off, like, oh, whatever, next question, like didn't give a shit. And I thought, yes, I remember this. This is how you deal with it. Those people are always going to be there. You just ignore them. You don't take it seriously. There's always going to be somebody whining about something. You don't have to fucking submit to the whining.
Yeah. I mean, well, the problem is now is that it's completely just top-down funded and astroturfed by international finance. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that too, yeah, obviously. Yeah. And that's obviously where it went wrong to begin with. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go on, sorry.
I was just going to say, even the smallest companies and intellectual properties and everything. Last night, I don't want to reiterate a lot of it because we got into it last night on episode Culture Dads. But stuff like BattleTech, like this author that used to write for BattleTech getting canceled. Who's heard of BattleTech? They're like this little not tiny, but like moderate sized miniature company that makes a miniature sci-fi war game with like mech suits and shit. And even they are just completely paused and under control of this thing. And it's because they are owned by Topps, the trading card company, which is now owned by Fanatics, which is owned by international finance goblin Michael G. Rubin, who is a part of BlackRock, right? So it's like the great Satan has their fingers in even like fucking BattleTech. You know what I mean? Like, nothing is safe.
They know when something is culturally effective, and that's when they gravitate towards it and want to control it, I think. I mean, back in the day, this is the thing, back in the day, say in the early days, even before our time, when we were very young, let's say, things like science fiction and horror and this kind of fantasy genre stuff was sort of laughed off as not serious and it's something for the kids or whatever, right? And then I think when they started making epic films and making like millions out of them through the 80s and 90s, I think they kind of copped on that these big ideas were powerful and they wanted to control them and move them their way, which they seem to just move them all towards superhero shit, I guess, or just, make everything gay. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not gay enough.
So when we because me and you, we have similar tastes in stuff like science fiction. I'm also a science fiction fan, but I'm also a science fiction hater because I can't stand most of the science fiction that's out now. I think they completely missed the point. I think Star Trek ruined it. I think that these types of like progressive sci-fi where technology makes everything better is like this. Yeah, it's just like that. I really love like the old school. Now Aegeon hits like it's not like necessarily the golden era. I mean, some of the stories are sort of golden era flavor, but you kind of hit a like late 60s, 70s, that really psychedelic sci-fi that was in there. And that's the type of stuff that I like. I like the psychedelic sci-fi. I like the old mad scientist stuff, the earthbound stuff, where it really has the pure spirit of science fiction. And that is that we have some how can I word it? We're a little bit worried about the direction that technology is taking us. Not that we believe that it's going to solve all of our problems. There's like a flavor of Luddism in there. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and even the early classic sci-fi, even works like Dune or Asimov's Foundation and stuff, I think have a vein of that, of like serious philosophy all the way through it. It's not just, there's a lot of religion in Dune, let's say. And it's definitely nothing like a Star Trek kind of thing. Although I wouldn't be as negative towards Star Trek as you. I would be about any Star Trek since sort of the what's his name? What's the little bald guy? Picard era. Even that was kind of like gay, but and even like even all of it is a bit not great. But I would watch it and think, okay, some of the stories would be kind of fun. And what was I saying there? I had a point and I lost it. Shit.
Little bald guy's gay. About the Luddism in science fiction.
No, but so from earlier on than Star Trek and that. I mean, there was always branches of it doing different stuff, but even like what they consider the classic and originator type sci-fi, it wasn't just like technology will save everything. It was more like even Heideggerian kind of what will technology do to us and speculating. It's the joy of science fiction is thinking and predicting the future in whatever way you like. And if you examine the world and how it evolves always in ways you will never expect, is how I see it. So I see everything in life, including culture, religion, everything, alters like a tree reaching for the sky, and like its little blossoms come out and its branches go in different directions continually, always changing, always trying to grow. And so if you keep that in mind, then it's never going to be kind of the same thing, and there's always going to be variation, and that's what you want. So every personal vision of the future is a chance to not necessarily predict it, but imagining it and predicting it, really writing about it, let's say, in a very forceful or influential style. You will influence the future and maybe make some of it come to pass, but it's more like studying an evolutionary study of possibilities, let's say, which doesn't occur in any other fiction, I don't think, because fantasy is kind of locked in not a pretend past, but a pretend alternate universe. Not that there's anything, not that fantasy isn't also, just as equally great.
Yeah.
But that's the joy of science fiction, is that it has that kind of quality of evolution and future speculation, which is weird.
Yeah. I made the argument that science fiction is our modern mythopoetic storytelling. I made the argument that yes, fantasy is kind of the mythopoetic, kind of like the classic mythopoetics. It has to do with our origin, has to do with mythology, has to do with guys with swords slaying dragons, et cetera, et cetera. But I also I said that science fiction is part of mythopoetics, part of the mythopoetica, if you will, because it has to do with looking towards the future. Because when we look at eschatology isn't just the origins of people, it's also the doom of a people, like the cataclysm or the apocalypse, right? And what is science fiction? Science fiction is like the if fantasy is looking to the past, is like the mythopoetics that looks backward. Science fiction is the oracle. Science fiction is the prophecy. Science fiction is dealing with our doom and everything like that. So I made the argument that science fiction is mythopoetic, but because of our kind of presuppositions of self-hate and guilt, and not just like white guilt or whatever, but we have this guilt of being modernists. We just like fucking hate ourselves. And everything that we do and we make now is terminally not as good as the ancients. But I make the argument that is our version of it, right? So it's like I say that science fiction is mythopoetic.
Yeah, it's hard to say comparing yourself to the ancients, and obviously there was great ancients who we will never be anything near as good as. And there's obviously that whole Greek view of the world that kind of looks at the distant past as the Hyperborean age was an infinitely superior age. You will never, and everything else is a decline from it. I'm not so sure about that. I do think that every age has its great heroes and its things, but the way that evolution changes things, again, in ways you would never expect, it kind of morphs into ranges and areas and the battle. Like, look at the nature of the battle today. It's not something you could have predicted or even explained to somebody, even in the probably early 20th century, the way it's internalized, struggling, like battling with some, not having to police your own thoughts, and like a society kind of turned against its own origins in this way, twisted apart, and this kind of, like, everything is so crazy, right? So the whole nature of the war, the nature of living is totally different. It's very science fiction in its way. It's like the way things that can twist and change, you will never expect, and it'll be weird, guaranteed weirdness. This is the thing about the psychedelic influence, which you like to bring up, which is great. And I'm a big fan of psychedelics. I haven't done them for years, but I was a big fan, and I don't naysay them. And I can see how the influence it had on science fiction and fantasy, and how it was nothing but positive, I would say, because it breaks down those barriers and lets you see the world in a way. Once you break down some of your internal ego and fears a little bit, it can be sort of regarding religion and social stuff and your ego, basically. You can begin to observe and think about the weird growth of life and the ways it does change, and you can begin to feel like reach out and try to grab that speculation that we try to do in our fiction and stuff like that, which is it's a psychedelic impulse. That's why its influence on literature and art was so profound, I think, even though it's kind of it's a very underground cult thing to consider now, and has been for a while, but it is profound and real in that it's a kind of stepping out of a comfort zone, definitely, and looking at the world with a whole new way.
Yeah. We're kind of like odd men out in the discussion on psychedelics, right?
Are we?
Because on one side you have the normie retards that think that psychedelics, that everything that happens to them on psychedelics, from the they think that the walls are waving when they shit their pants. They think everything's profound and everything. You know what I mean? It's like, good, bro. You remember we got those weird boners all at the same time? Like, that's like the kind of stuff that they think is incredible, right? And then you have guys in our sphere that think that psychedelics are completely retarded and degenerate and everything like that. And you mentioned something in one of your most recent streams that I thought was just excellent. You said that you think that psychedelics should include a little bit of trauma, and that's what makes them important.
yeah, the risk, the adventure, for sure. I mean, I had bad trips, for sure. I had one where I totally went crazy. I got arrested. I should talk about the details of this one, but I didn't kill anybody. Well, all right, so I was having a big party at my house. We had these parties at our house. We had this like metal house, and we had a jam room in the basement and all this. I was like a real metal kid. I had like long hair, and what happened? Me and this other guy, and how many of us was there? Was there 2 or 3? Some guy showed up. Some guy I had trusted with what was like a Teddy Graham, like that was like dipped in liquid acid. So I didn't even know how many hits was in it. It was like beyond the normal number of hits. And in our genius, we decided to take this at this party. And I wound up totally like just it was unlike every other experience, because usually you remember all the details, right? Everything's very vivid and clear. It's not like being drunk where you black out, but this was like a blackout where I went into a dream state, and I sort of couldn't remember everything that happened at all. And I still don't. And even the things I do remember, to me, are like a dream. But I like punched out a window. I like ran around naked. I was pulling out my hair. I had like really long hair, and I was running around just tearing it out of my head. Like everyone said they could just hear it ripping.
Oh, God.
You know what's funny, though? There's a funny thing about this is, now at the time, I was just like an art school kid, right? I wasn't into politics at all. Like, I knew nothing about any of this stuff. But I spent a lot of that night in anguish, screaming "filthy communist swine" and tearing out my hair, and I do remember feeling like I was seeing the future in some ways. I remember seeing. I remember I stood in a room and I walked around in a circle for a long time, trying to look over my shoulder because I thought someone was just out of my sight trying to talk to me, and it was like stupid shit like this. And I remember seeing people in the shadows that weren't really there, and I remember. A lot of crazy shit happened. Eventually, they called the cops and arrested me when I started punched out a window and started wrecking the furniture. And they're like, "Okay, get him out here." But everything was fine. And in fact, a girl that was there, like, asked me out. A really beautiful girl. I remember seeing her and thinking she was like an angel. She had like long red hair. And something about me acting like a fucking lunatic she liked, I guess. And like we went out afterwards. I remember that. So it wasn't all. I couldn't have been too scary or fucked. That was like the extreme. And actually, when I was in jail, when I was in the drunk tank, I thought I was in hell. I remember that because the walls were. I couldn't remember how I got there, and the walls were moving. Like I was still hallucinating pretty hard. I remember thinking, I thought I was never going to get out for a while there. I remember sitting down and thinking, okay, I'm never getting out of here. Like, how do I cope with this? So it was pretty intense. I remember it was pretty happy when the doors opened in the morning. I can tell you that.
Did they charge you with anything?
No. Cops were nice, and then they even came and checked up on me. Like later on, they're like, you were pretty fucked up. I was like, yeah, I don't know. So I mean, I don't recommend that. I'm not saying that because that's dangerous. But, yeah, I mean, don't just take some fucking Teddygram or some cookie off somebody that's dipped in liquid acid, for fuck's sake. I mean, that's retarded. But the overall experience, I do not regret. I mean, that one, even that, I don't regret that one either. But that's just dangerous. That's too much. But I would recommend a certain experimentation. I really would. And then, like I said, I think in that stream, and I think everybody knows, in the old days, I mean, everyone did do this. Like the Eleusinian mysteries, ancient Greece. It was, I think it was probably an Indo-European ritual, I think, or something, for everyone to go through that experience at some point, communally, and to be witness to the sacred mysteries as a religious thing.
Yeah.
So I think there was good reason for that, and that it does have an influence on people's creativity and the boundaries the dropping of boundaries, in a certain sense, in how they see the world.
Yeah. My worst trip ever doing acid was actually my best one. It was I took way too much. I tripped fucking. I was like, it was like I don't know if it was bad or if it was really good. I don't really remember. But I literally went through like my life flashing before my eyes. All I did, I got stuck in this like mind loop thinking about because at this point in my life when I was doing this, I wasn't really a good guy. I was a shitty kid from a broken home and poverty. A lot of my friends were on drugs. I abused a lot of hard drugs. I was a womanizer. Like I was just like, I used to like think it was funny to steal. I was just like a shitty kid, right? And I took the acid, and I remember sitting there, like going through a loop in my head over and over again, like how much of a piece of crap I was, and how like evil my behavior was, and how insignificant I am to the universe, and like thoughts about faith, and I went through this. This is gonna sound crazy to people, but I went through like all of these stages. It was like I went through this thing of like, oh man, I hate myself. I'm the worst person ever. How could I have ever done this? I let my pop down. He'd hate me if he saw me like this. I'm letting everybody down. There's this grand, greater good above me that I've never saw because I'm so fucking selfish. And then I get to this is when it gets kind of morbid, but I get to this part where it's like, I just have to kill myself. I was like, I just fucking die. What am I even doing here? And I went through like all these emotions, and then I went to acceptance. Like I'm already dead. I'm like, yeah, you know what? I did. It's not even gonna matter. Who cares? Whatever. And then I went and I came through the other side to this profound thing. Like I can change all of this, and I could do something great. And like all this.
Yeah.
And then I'll tell you what. After the trip was over, I came out a different person.
Oh, yeah.
Like I went in like this way and came out a different person. It was crazy. It was crazy.
Even normals are starting to admit this. Well, they always have. There's always been like a hidden culture of people even doing it for medicinal and psychological purposes. Like I saw a video recently of all people, Mike Tyson and what's that cheesy guy? He gives motivational speaker. Is it Tony something or other? Tony Robbins is that his name or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Some kind of cheesy, like you'd recognize him if you saw him. And they were both talking about how their lives were changed, like him and fucking Mike Tyson, because they took some kind of toad venom thing and totally tripped out like insanely and thought they died. And basically the same thing, right? Just a harsh, like a heavy psychedelic experience. And that changed them fundamentally, and they decided to change their lives because of it. So that is like a common story. People since the beginning. I remember hearing about Cary Grant, how he took LSD to cure he cured his depression by taking LSD.
Mm-hmm.
And just people say that, and I believe it, because it totally takes you. It knocks you, like there's a fear. There's that psychological trauma. You have to have like the kind of trip probably that scares you more than a bit, and it kind of knocks you out of. Just makes you realize you're wrapped up in a possibly even social or largely irrelevant kind of routine or something.
Yeah. Would you say that some of these experiences influence your art today, even though you haven't done it in a long time?
My like visual art, like painting and stuff.
Yeah, or your writing,
or my writing. It must have. Yeah, I can't say how. I feel like I was just a different person before and after. I don't know how different, but it must have, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was only a kid. I was like, when I started doing it, first time I took acid, I was probably only been 17, young, I think. And I was pretty wild when I was 17. I was, but like it was funny. Me and my friends starting out, right? We were like, kind of, this is it, and everything, like nothing's changed, right? Everything we were the same all the way through. But at the beginning, we were like the kids that would play Dungeons and Dragons at the recess. It'd be like the nerds, kind of. I was like a chubby kid with glasses playing the D&D, and like we were playing like computer games, like early era computer games or whatever.
Yeah.
But then all the same, and I still would like those things. Now I never stopped liking them. I don't look back and think, oh, that was so embarrassing. But then around 13, 14, we just got into heavy metal and drinking hard and partying, and I guess obviously taking certain drugs, and getting girls and all that. So, but like nothing changed fundamentally about us. It was more like we just became interested in other things. The next thing that came along wasn't like we, tried to change. I'm not sure how I got talking about that. What was my point there?
Let me before we I wanted to talk to you about your book, because I actually have like all your books, right? I've read all of your books in their entirety, except I haven't finished Dream God yet. I'm going to come back on that. But The Fall and Decline of Western Art, the whole first part of your book is effectively, like, for folks who haven't read this, the first part of Brendan's book is this absolute defiling of modern art. It just like rips it apart. He literally breaks in this form, and this bestial, ravenous, lustful form breaks through the wall, and modern art is just clawing and trying to get away. And Brendan comes in with lustful drool dripping from his fanged jowls, this bestial grin cut across his face, tears off its blouse. Modern art is screaming to get away, and Brendan
I raped it.
Smothers it with a pillow until the last few vestiges of oxygen exit from its empty lungs, and then you sit there and smile as the body goes cold. That is how destructive this takedown is of so it is a really good book. And then it goes into he talks about Platonic forms and everything like that, and we could have a debate about that. But and then he goes into some stuff that is really, really profound. He talks about kind of the locale. A lot of this stuff really hit home for me, because these are things that I've talked about before in different words, about how certain localities have this like magic soil that breed these different artists. Like you mentioned, what is it, like Da Vinci and Michelangelo came from Florence in the same time period, like these kinds of things, right? And it just does this really good job of painting why ancient art is just objectively superior to modern art. But one thing that I was kind of like really dying to hear was, what is the solution? You know what I mean? You kind of get into it a little bit at the end of whatever, but you don't really at least from what I remember, you don't really go into how do we fix this? How do we recreate this? Can we recreate this? Could you talk on that?
Yeah, because I'm not really sure. And as I say, like, there's really the fork in the roads then as the book really fundamentally is the question, the Spenglerian question is as basically whether to be an accelerationist or not. You know, can you just, because, you know, you could say, let's say by some magical means, we retook our culture, you know, as sort of effectively good, like you're right there. We're talking like fucking Fantasyland. We're talking Walt Disney right there. But anyways, let's say we could. And what do we do then? You'd have to, like, I have an idea actually what we would do. So I can't say I would be clueless, but like a lot of people would just be like, okay, we'll go back to what? We go to Gothic classical architecture and we just keep doing it. Like what I think you'd have to do is create a system like the old Atelier guild system and start from understand what modernism is based on what I say in the first half of the book. Understand it's like a kind of bad detour and a lie, a mistake that was foisted on us. And you'd have to somehow search back for a fertile period to be again inspired by, or at least have something new that had that certain element of tradition in it, that it was speaking to something that was bigger than yourself, bigger than your own personal life or your personal expression. It would be something that spoke to the wider tradition of your genealogy and your bloodline and your history. It has to be connected to that to have any real meaning in a larger sense. I think that's a big fundamental part of it. So, you know, in an imaginary scenario, maybe we could start doing that, but it seems like the energy is more in the, sadly, Spenglerian dissipation scenario where things just get worse to a point of total chaos, and then new order, new value system comes in, whatever it might be, and like it seems to be a period of just dissipation and collapse. I'm pretty sure I'd say that in the book. What we're looking for is kind of a collapse that we can survive and ease our way into the next stage. But it does have to be something new. It's the one thing the modernists get right is you do well, even though they're not doing anything new, they're trapped in the same shit for fucking how long has it been? The same fucking block houses, you know, glass box fucking skyscrapers and splatter paintings and nude performance art or whatever. It's just been the same shit for decades. So they're not doing anything new. They've lost that. They claim to be doing something new just because they always reach for some shock value thing that makes you feel like it's new, according to the principles that they force you to learn and the average person kind of believes. But we would have to have something new for it to be vital in some way. So where and how that comes along, I'm not sure. I'm not sure you can just, maybe a man or a group can construct that and create a new style. I mean, surely they can, and it has happened. But at this weird stage we're at, I don't know. It feels like there needs to be a bit of a force majeure event.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it feels like to me. But that would be the two roads. Either you want to accelerate the total collapse of this weird monstrosity the way it is, or you want to try and fight back directly to a point in the past that you can see. So I don't know that if, say, you got the imaginary scenario and we just started making classical buildings everywhere, you might say, you know, the critics would say, oh, it's pastiche, it's been done. Now we're stuck in a different type of unchanging loop or something. But I would think, I mean, as long as it evolved somewhere new from there, that wasn't listening to the poisonous lies of somebody who has intentionally misled you with manipulation, fancy talk.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it would evolve somewhere a little bit healthier. So I've kind of said that in a convoluted way, and I've even confused myself trying to say it. Hopefully I say it more distinct in the book. It's been a while since I read it. But like, I don't really have a concrete answer to that. I don't think anybody has. Most you can say is speculate, yes, at what might happen, and wonder, should you be fighting one way or the other? Should you be cheering on the fact that, you know, the people in charge are so visibly kind of falling apart at the seams, or how should one go about it? I don't know. All you can do what we're doing is just doing our own way. We have a little opportunity through the way we do it, do our little books and things. And the most practical thing we could be doing. I don't see any other thing we could be doing.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that doesn't. So I don't really have an answer overall, but that's sort of an answer.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I think that I consider myself a romantic of sorts, right? I consider myself somebody that very much appreciates the trappings and the flavor and the ornateness of the ancient style of art. You know what I mean? But I think that it's time that we do it in a way that we can practically do it. I think that the people that are not romantics, that call themselves romantics, but are actually just fetishists, do us a disservice when they think that we could just like rebuild classical buildings and do all this we don't have any of the infrastructure to do that. None of the infrastructure is on our side. A lot of people don't realize, and this is something coming from both sides. You have like these kind of like libertarian types that like look at the ancient art and think, oh, the people did that, when it wasn't the people. It was top down organized. You know, it was funded top down. It was envisioned by the state, by statesmen, by very rich philanthropists, going all the way up. And you know, me and you've talked about this from the Medicis going to Milton Hershey. We've had guys that do that. Those guys aren't around anymore. And you mentioned this in your book. You talk about how we don't have those kinds of guys anymore. They're all these like up jump merchant capitalists that want to commodify everything and turn everything into filth and leave behind these fetid, rotting carcasses after they have lost their profitability. They're not around anymore. And then on the other side, we don't have the top down, the guys that are the pseudo romantics. We don't have the governmental or the institutional. We don't have that anymore to back us up. That's in the hands of bad guys that do ridiculous stuff like you're talking about. And what I think is hilarious, as you mentioned very clearly, that they still think that they're doing something new, but they've just been doing the same stale gay shit for the last 60 years.
70 years or 70, something like that.
Yeah. I think in the book you mentioned about sodomites shooting paint out of their anuses or something, which is funny and absurd, but it's also what they actually do. It's grotesque.
Oh, they do, yeah. They do worse than that. But you were mentioning that Hershey guy. Shortly after you mentioned that Hershey thing, I don't know much about that. I'm not American, and that's like specific to your locality, I think. But I tuned into another podcast that happened to bring him up, and you probably know this. I didn't know that his company, Hershey's company, they eventually moved the factory to Mexico, I guess, right? Yeah. But that was like the company didn't want to do that. That they did some assessment was done or something, and they could see there was like a 400% profit, maybe more, maybe it was 400 or 800% profit or something in doing that. But they were like, no, they were like loyal to the area. Like, no, this is where we're from. We're not going anywhere. And the government themselves began buying shares and bought them out and moved the company. The government saw the profits. Like that's what I read or overheard in this podcast, so, which is pretty astounding to show how like corrupt things really are.
Yeah, they were actually bought out by a hedge fund from Chicago, which are
but this guy was saying the hedge fund was actually like a front for the government themselves, like some kind of the state itself was like basically doing. But I guess maybe
I don't know about that. I never. It could be true. I actually worked there at the time during the the Mexico debacle. Yeah, so I didn't know anything about it. Could be true. I just that's not how I understand it.
Right. Anyways, that's a side topic to what you were saying.
No, it's true. The Hershey Company. There's a little bit of a side thing, but the Hershey Company, which there is a whole town named after Milton Hershey. It's called Hershey, Pennsylvania. This guy, Milton Hershey, he built the chocolate factory, which was the oldest and biggest chocolate factory in the world. Like, for real. Like, this thing was a monster, and it's constructed in the 1800s, and it still stood up until like pretty recently. I guess 10 years ago or something. They just tore it down. But what happened is these Chicago bankers bought it up, forced them to go to Mexico. which they actually had to close down because the chocolate came back so contaminated so much that it became a problem. So they actually shut down the Mexican plant and lost a bunch of money. But
it's always the same. They always think they're going to profit, and it always fucks up. Like it's the same story. It's always the same.
Yep, over and over and over again. But
the
guy,
the globalist money. Go on, sorry. Yeah. Oh
no, say what you're gonna say.
No, it's fine. You finish, and then I'll rant about it.
I was gonna say it's just that guy Milton Hershey in his time. He built a hospital. He built an orphanage. It's called the Milton Hershey School for Kids. He built a theater, a beautiful theater that's still there. It gets filled with a bunch of faggots that do like corny shit, right? He built so many things, libraries, all this kind out of his own pocket for his people. You know what I mean? Those kind of guys aren't around anymore.
Yeah. And they could be, but the whole system is so corrupt. But that reminds me of even companies I've worked for since, and even not that long ago, whenever the little carrot is dangled in their face of getting something done cheaper in the third world, they jump at it and they think, oh, their profits are profits. And it always fucks up and somebody else has to fix it. It's always a disaster. Always. Every time. They never learn.
Never fails.
Yeah.
So
funny.
I wanted to talk, and you kind of mentioned this a little bit. Me and you are kind of like really into the pulp stuff, and which, by the way, I wanted to ask you how you are the sales for Aegeon reaching to what you expected, or how you doing in that arena?
Pretty good, yeah. Like it's like when it first comes out. I know it's when so there's a huge bump when the book first come out. For I should track how long it lasts. I'm not even sure. We actually discussed this, and then it kind of drops off really fast, and then you just it, whatever, 1 or 2 a day maybe or something. So I just think that's fine. It's pretty much like the best-selling book of them all so far was my first, was the nonfiction. So if I was smart, I would just keep writing nonfiction. Although I am writing nonfiction, I will produce some of those soon and actually get those out as well. But my heart is in doing the fiction, so that's fine by me. But from what I can see, if I feel, anyways, I don't know. Hopefully, if I just keep at it and keep pumping them out, and even get the rate up so that I'm even doing one a month. I think this is my goal. This is my thing I keep dreaming about. Then you could keep kind of sailing along at a certain level. I think, especially because once they're out, and someone will keep buying them. This is the thing about selling books in this way. Even if your sales are bad at start, it'll just keep kind of pedaling along as long as you're out there getting some attention. Keeps going. So that's the art book that I wrote how many years ago now? I don't know. I can't remember. Is it 5 years or more? No, it must be more. Whenever I wrote the art book, I mean, that still sells. I still make money off it, and I don't have to write it again. So I just think, besides being for me, it's a dedication to do it in an authentic way. Either way, I do obviously want to grift and make some money to make it worthwhile. Whenever that kind of thing that I don't see anymore, which is a good. Although you've introduced me since to people that are like Circova and some of those guys, others have been also had this idea and trying to do it in a proper way. But I can't. Whatever they're doing is what they do. I just have my own idea, my way, and I just want to keep doing it. So sales are good enough that I want to speed it up, keep doing it, do more. If I go to 10 copies and say or so, and sales haven't really picked up a lot, I might probably still keep doing it. As long as they are the way they are now, I'll keep doing it. Yeah. So good enough. Anyways, I think you're doing better. You've got a bit more with Biz Archives, but you got more editions out there as well. Yeah. And I've got the two other. Yeah. Oops. Oh, I just dropped something.
Yeah, we also got almost a year on you. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, I feel like it's fine. Yeah, and I've still got the other 2 books selling, and I'm also working on some other books as well. So I'll just keep doing that. That'll be me. That'll be me for whatever. I don't know, till I die, I guess, or something changes.
Yeah. I found that I was actually pretty shocked by the amount of interest in the Pulp Fiction stuff. You know what I mean? Because it's this is how somebody else that does both, like you do. They said that They do the fiction, and they do fiction more often, but they spit out a nonfiction book once in a while. Said that the nonfiction is much more work. You got to make sure that things are correct in it. You got to labor on it and all that, and then you write it, and then it kind of has like a ceiling where everybody that wants it gets it. Whereas the fiction, you kind of keep spitting it out, and then like it grows over time. Then you can have a much bigger catalog, which over time he makes more money. Which, you know, I thought I took that to heart, and we're working on expanding our catalog and everything, right? But I was when I first dropped Bizarre Archives, I didn't even know there were other pulp publishers out there. You know, I thought I was like the first one. I was like, I don't even know if people are gonna like this. You know, I was completely rolling the nuts.
I didn't know about those other guys at all till you showed me. I thought it was like you and me.
Yeah,
maybe some like old, like some horrible old ones were still. Like whenever I try to look at the old classic ones, Weird Tales or whatever, they're all just like online, and it looks pretty lame. You know, they're not producing an actual like magazine like they used to. So yeah, I didn't know there was guys doing that. Yeah, but I guess obviously it's the type of thing that isn't promoted in the mass media and is hard to discover. You have to do it through roundabout ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder how hard it would be to acquire some of those old like Argosy or Amazing Stories or Weird Tales or Starlings or whatever.
No, because I'd say those people, the cosmopolitans who have intentionally taken them over, have done so for a reason. They'll be happy to park them and do nothing with them than give them to somebody who would actually do them in a proper way.
Yeah,
that's what I think. Those names are taken. They're like intentionally taken those names and sealed them away in a vault. Even if they produce anything, it'll be just fucking, you know, Bobo the lesbian falls down some stairs or whatever the fuck they do.
Falls down some stairs.
I remembered another one from that same edition. I think there was another gay and lesbian science fiction story, and it was about a woman who goes back in time to find a cave woman, and they start a lesbian relationship. And it's not even a cave woman; it's almost like a fucking hairy Neanderthal woman, like a crazy animal thing. And they start having this fucking lesbian relationship in the past. And this is the science fiction story. I was like, this is so fucking. I can't believe it.
Oh my god, they're gross too. It's always it's like me and you write stories that have a little bit of flavor of like erotica. We have stuff in there that's violent. We have stuff in there that's like, you know, that pushes the limits, right? Right. But the climax of our stories is part of the story. It's the hero overcoming the obstacle. It's traditional storytelling. These people, the climax of their story is the fuck scene. It's like some fuck scene. You know what I mean? That's like the totality of the thrust of their stories. You know, it's just they're just gross.
In that one I read, it was literally that the lesbian rejected the Italian guy that was hitting on her. And this is the science fiction fucking climax. Like, she sassily showed him, oh, not today. You machismo fucking whatever.
Yeah.
Like that's the point of it.
Oh my god. What could be like that, but that's exciting to them, right? That in their little world.
Is it really though? Is it really? It's just like punishing. It's just a way to antagonize, or like, it's like a punishment. It's like, you know, it's like, fuck you. Maybe, are they really excited by that? Like, do they really flock to it? And who knows? Who knows what the science fiction of our sort wasn't from them. What I remember back in the day, this is the other thing I remember, is every person like that would be mocking you for, back in the day, for like, you know, if you said you like Conan the Barbarian, the movie, or, you know, any of the classic shit we're talking about, you know, people like that would be laughing at you. They'd be like, "Oh, you're so juvenile," and you know, read Hemingway or something. You know, like, to them it was laughable trash. But then I always this because of my advanced age as well. I can sort of I notice certain things that in a period of 10 years, anything that's classic like that we like, they'll mock you at first. They'll mock the shit out of you, and then within 10 years, they will, or less, five years. It will be to them a classic thing that they always liked, and they will disparaging you and saying, "What's this crazy shit?" From everything that was good back in the day, like, you know, old thrash music, whatever. I just remember it was a hard slog with certain people, like normal people, usually chicks, whatever. They just like think it was shit. Right. And then all of a sudden 10 years later, it's like, oh, we were always there with you. We liked it too. It's like, fuck you, you idiot. You did not. And you still don't like this new thing that you can't cope with either, because you just work on superficial symbology and, the impression of things. You don't actually even like the thing or understand how it works. I don't think the average person, I'm not sure they even understand music or literature at all. Some of them anyways. It's just like a thing to do in a social sense, like that they want to be seen liking the current thing, liking the latest thing.
Yeah.
But that's another complaint. I shouldn't.
Yeah.
I've been ranting too much about that lately.
About the eternal normal.
Yeah. I'd love to be able to wrap them up like that in a little derogatory generalization, because they've been such a pain in my side always. Because political stuff aside, they're always the same. It's like normal, like the totally average normal type person just does stuff they're very easily scared by something. In terms of art, they don't get into the kind of culty, obsessive, geeky, I guess, details of the different genres. That don't get all geeky and into it and learn who was the real genius there, who inspired who. They don't go down that little route. Generally, they don't. So, to them, it means something else. It's something you do in a social context, I think. I don't know. I mean, they must like something. Although I do know a guy, an accountant, who claims he doesn't like music. I've never heard anybody say this, but this one guy, he doesn't.
I mean,
like
an accountant
music.
would say that.
But no music. What?
What is he?
Like,
What does he
Jesus
listen to?
Nothing. He hates all. He hates it all. He doesn't like music. He doesn't get it, or I don't know what. That's what he said to me. Anyways, I was like, okay, buddy.
That's
whatever.
I just pictured like he comes home like to an empty house that has nothing but like a single wooden chair, and he sits there in his pristine suit with a bow tie and listens to like a metronome click for hours as he stares blankly.
Yeah, maybe he crunches some more numbers while he's in his spare time as well, outside of work. Who knows?
yeah. He's like doing math problem, like long division. Oh God, yeah.
No, that would actually be cool in a way. He wouldn't do that. That would be weird and kind of cool. He wouldn't do that.
Oh. Shit. All right, Mr. Brendan, we're going over an hour here. We're gonna wrap it up, unfortunately, but we'll definitely bring you back on to talk more about art and pulp and science fiction and all the interesting stuff that we like to talk about. But is there anything you'd like to say to the people?
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on, and go out and buy my books. Obviously, I'm sure you'll find something in any of them that will delight you in some fashion. Aegeon, I produce other people's, or I publish other people's short stories, but mostly they're my own still, because I want a vehicle for my own, because I just have an endless multitude of ideas for a short story. So, but I'm happy to get submissions and publish other people's stories. So check them out. I'm sure you'll like at least some of them, and it's going to keep coming at you. So you may as well get in there and be hip. And I've got lots of writing submissions, but and good, not bad on the illustration. But I could use a few more illustration submissions. I would say, if anybody's out there who's an illustrator who's interested in getting their work in a book that, once it's in there, again, it'll just be there like forever, for as long as it's printed and it's available. So it's not like it's not a passing thing that comes and goes away. Like I said, my old books are still being sold every day. So it's not a bad gig in some ways in that respect. In terms of advertising yourself, I don't think so. Illustrators is what I'd like to see more submissions from. And yeah, the new one's out, and the next one will be out hopefully in 2 months, not 3 months, but 2 months. And then after that, if I'm lucky, soon we'll get her down to if I can arrange it. And in the meantime, I'll keep doing some other books and all the other crazy shit I do, whatever stuff like this, Yeah.
Very good. Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, Brandon, I appreciate you coming on, man. It's always so much fun talking with you and getting into all this kind of stuff. because I think that the types of art forms that we're into, the science fiction and the horror and the fantasy, the pulp fiction, adventure stories, psychedelic art, just all this kind of stuff. A lot of people don't realize how influenced it was by the classic stuff, how masterful a lot of it was. Guys like Larry Elmore and Frank Frazetta, and like, there's just so many that are just like, if you put up a Frank Frazetta painting in front of Michelangelo back when he was alive, he would be like, this is a beautiful piece. You know what I mean? It might even influence. It might have even influenced him. You know what I mean? So
but in many ways, but Frazetta actually, so Frazetta doesn't get enough credit as he deserves, because there's several other things about him. First of all, he wouldn't necessarily work. Almost every artist who does that kind of work at that kind of level would use models and an arrangement, a visual reference from reality. He did not, apparently anyways, necessarily do that. And that someone else even said he would paint in oils, like without even a bottom sketch, directly just dab, paint directly on the canvas. I don't know if you know anything about painting, but this is like unbelievable to do stuff he was doing in that fashion. So he never gets enough credit, I don't think. Yeah, I wouldn't even know that Michelangelo could do something. You know, I mean, not to say that he wasn't, beyond superhuman, and in many ways beyond Frazetta as well. If you consider his amount of work and the sculpture and drawing and painting that he did, but Frazetta in his way, just because he was in the era post Greenberg when art was ruined and he could not be a fine artist, he had to be considered a lowly pulp artist or magazine commercial artist or whatever, right? So he's forever pigeonholed in that way, but yeah, it's unfair to him.
Yeah, magnificent, timeless, eternal, as good as the greats. Dude, we have so much wonderful, excellent art that was created not that long ago, that was in our era, that can be lifted up, and a lot of it gets found in these genres and these art forms that we're talking about: fantasy, science fiction, horror. This is where the descendants of the great classical art survived, in my opinion. So I'd like to say one last thing before you go. Go ahead. Go ahead.
And it is interesting. The original fantasy writer, the one who's really credited with it. Well, there's two people. There's really Robert E. Howard. Because he predates, like a lot of people. But it really was Lord Dunsany. And do you know about him at all? The writer?
Yeah. He wrote.
Yeah. He was kind of the original fantasy writer. And as it happens, I've met and kind of see every now and again the current Lord Dunsany, his great grandson. And he's a cool guy. He makes horror movies, and he lives in a castle. And I don't know, every now and again I try to get up to him or something. I don't know him well or anything, but he's a cool guy. And he's got, I was telling you, he's got letters in his house from fucking Lovecraft and Aleister Crowley, people like this, handwritten letters he can show you to his dad, because they were such fans of his, because he was because his stories are really about old gods and a lot of stuff you're talking about, the primordial ideas and stuff like that. But he was one of the originators of the whole genre of fantasy, and everything that came since, even science fiction, everything since, is greatly indebted to him, even though you might argue he's not as big. You might say he's not as good as writer as Tolkien or the others, but he was an original thinker who kind of started it all. So it's just an interesting side note that by total coincidence I met this guy and are able to go up there and see, he shows me the records of his dad's stuff and all this. It's cool. If you were out here, you'd love it to go up there and check it out. But I don't know. That's just a funny side note.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. So yeah, it has lineage. This isn't just silly, made up, make believe kid stuff. This is legitimate Western art traditions that have legitimate roots and lineage. So yeah. So I like to bring it to light and shine a light on it and everything like that. But yeah, before me and Brendan get yakking again, and we'll be here for another hour. We gotta shut it down. Guys, I appreciate all you guys, all the culture dads out there. Appreciate all you guys' support. I know if you're listening to this, you probably are, but if you're not, go over to imperiumpress.org/podcast and check out all the good stuff over there. Sign up for the Gumroad, get the hardback books, all that kind of stuff. Check out me, the Bizarchives, thebizarchives.com. We got lots of cool books on there. And check out our guest, Mr. Brendan here from Aureus Press. Follow him on Telegram at Aureus Press, on Twitter at Trad_Westart, right?
Yeah.
Trad Westart.
The old name, sadly, yeah.
And then over on Aegeon-Sci-Fi.com and get yourself a copy of Aegeon Sci-Fi Illustrated issue number 2. I can't wait. It's in the mail right now. Your cover looks beautiful, by the way. I can't wait to have it on myself. So anyway, that's gonna be it. That's gonna be it for this evening. Hails and blessings to everybody. I'll see you guys next time here on Culture Dads.
All right, thanks for having me. Thanks, Dad.
You're listening to an episode of the latest Culture Dads, Age of Sword and Cassette, where two fathers and community leaders discuss modern culture from a timeless perspective. Head on over to culturedads.com for podcasts every week.